All right, we're going to adjourn this work session and call our regular meeting to order. Roll call, Carol, please.
Gant, Davis,
Here.
Diamond, Vaughn,
Here.
Lindsay, Smith, Nelson,
Here.
Tucker, McMillan.
Here. Thank you, Carol. I'd like to ask everybody to please stand for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. David, do you mind leading us in?
Father, we thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. We thank you for all the blessings that you bestow upon us. I ask that you give each person here that's making decisions tonight on behalf of this planning commission wisdom to make the right decisions for this community. And Father, we love you, and we thank you for what you have done for us. Thank you that you've made a way for us to be right with you and to have a relationship with you. We thank you for that. Father, we thank you for the people that protect the freedoms that we exercise here. We do not take it for granted. You don't have to look very far to see the oppression that occurs in other countries. And Father, we thank you for the men and women that sacrifice their lives, health, and fortunes to protect the freedoms that we exercise. We ask that you bless their families at this time as well. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, David. All right, we have some minutes here to approve. November 1st work session, November 1st special session, November 14th work session, and November 14th regular session. Anybody, do we have any changes or errors, anything? All right, minutes stand approved as written. All right, do we have city council report?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Buckle up. We've had quite a bit of activity at our previous couple of city council meetings. I can tell you that we did recently enter into automatic aid agreements with our fire department and both the city of Daphne and Loxley fire departments. We've awarded a bid to renovate Spirit Park, about $600,000 bid, I believe, so major improvements at Spirit Park.
597,000.
Our mayor has a very sharp pencil, ladies and gentlemen. I can guarantee you that. We've also, in addition to that, we're going to repair some lights on the tennis courts. We did have a hearing on a public nuisance complaint on Cemetery Road that we're considering, and that'll be up on the next, at our next meeting to be considered again. Let's see, we did approve an update to the table of permitted uses, which allows gas pumps and other service station type activities in B2 with special exception, as we've previously discussed here at our meetings. Oh, let's see. We adopted an ordinance allowing the sale of medical marijuana in, I guess it's in B1 and with special.
B3 with planning, I'm sorry. B2, B3, B4 with planning commission approved.
That was a good one. Right, and with planning commission approval, of course. So. We approved a zoning change from R1 to B2 at 32128 Broken Branch Circle. We approved resolution, approve an act to be executed by the legislature to annex the property at Cypress Point, which is exciting. We're finally moving forward on our fire station number 1 construction. We're getting geotech testing and surveying done, and we contracted with Sawgrass Engineering, so we'll be moving forward on that very soon. That's exciting. I think the last note I had, if I can read my handwriting, oh yeah, we awarded a bid for installation of irrigation along 31, for a portion of 31 anyway, about half of it, I believe. Did I miss anything, Mr. Mayor?
Only thing I'd add is we do have an event this Thursday night here at the community center. Our annual book reading event for the kids starts at 6 o'clock. We'll have cocoa and sugar cookies and a special visitor from the North Pole. So please bring your kids to that event. It's a great event. Well attended, 150 people or so. It's a good event if you can join us.
All right, thank you all for the city council report. All right, we'll move along here. We have old business, agenda item 221102, application for master plan. We'll have a public hearing on this agenda item. The description is Northwood subdivision, US Highway 225, north of Stillwater subdivision. Dewberry Engineers, Inc., on behalf of Dilworth Development, Inc. If anybody here wishes to speak on this agenda item, Carol will have a sign-in sheet. If you would, please go over to Carol and print your name and address, and I'll call on you, and come up to the microphone and state your name and address, and we'll be glad to hear from you. All right. Casey, you want to give us your staff report, please, sir?
Mr. Chairman, this applicant is requesting approval for the master plan for Northwood subdivision, located to the east of US Highway 225 and north of Stillwater subdivision, outside the corporate limits of the city of Spanish Fort. The master plan as submitted proposes to subdivide 107.43 acres located to the north of Stillwater subdivision and to the south of the Lakes subdivision into 161 lots, averaging approximately 12,000 square feet per lot. The applicant is proposing to construct 7,873 linear feet of roadway with a right-of-way of 60 feet. The existing conditions within the vicinity of the subject property are typically low to medium-density single-family residential uses similar to the proposed development. The applicant has provided a total of 46.78 acres, or 44% of common area, and a total of 12.11 acres, or 11.3% of park/rec space. A traffic study has been provided with the initial application for master plan approval and has been reviewed by city staff. The traffic improvements as recommended in the study include a north and southbound turn lane on State Route 225 at the subdivision entrance, and also an additional southbound right turn lane on State Route 225 at US Highway 31 with signal phasing and timing at full build-out. The applicant has provided verification of service from all applicable utility providers. Staff has reviewed the submitted information regarding this application for master plan approval and has found all required documentation to be accounted for and in compliance with all applicable sections of the Spanish Fort subdivision regulations. Therefore, pending further comments, staff recommends the Planning Commission approve agenda item 221102, application for master plan approval for Northwood subdivision.
All right, thank you, Casey.
Mr. Chairman, just for organization purposes, so everybody understands, there's actually two agenda items tonight. The first one is the approval of the master plan, which is just the layout of the proposed overall site and how it would be developed in phases. The second application that will come up at a second public hearing is for the approval of the first phase of the subdivision, Phase 1.
All right, thank you, David. This subdivision is, or this master plan is in the county, correct? This is just our ETJ, so all we have jurisdiction over is subdivision regs, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, we'll open it up for discussion. All right, no discussion. All right, discussion's closed. We'll have our public hearing. People still signing? Okay. If you would, if it's the same, if you've heard the comments prior to you getting up there to speak, we'd love to hear from you, but if it's the same thing, if you would just let us know that, you know, your comments are basically the same as a previous speaker, okay? All right. All right, Michael Brongo, and I'm going to get some of these names wrong. I'm sorry. That's why I asked to print because, all right. Did I say that right? It is Brongo? Push the button on the microphone, please.
You nailed it, sir. Michael Brongo, 33178 Boardwalk Drive. I guess I just needed some education on this. I tried calling the planning department, and I guess some of my questions they said to bring here instead, and hopefully you guys could educate me a little bit on it. Regarding the master plan layout, it's my understanding that you need to have 2 entrances and exits based on how many homes are planning on going in here. So looking at this, it seemed like where Phase 3 goes up into that cul-de-sac there, if you got rid of one lot, you could actually tie back into 225 and have 2 entrances for this subdivision. I don't know if there's a minimum distance between the two based on fire code or wherever the purpose is for it, but it seemed like that would be a reasonable layout to have that second entrance and exit for this subdivision layout.
All right, we'll try to answer your questions at the end. This isn't a question and answer.
Oh, I got you.
We're letting you hear, because this is a public hearing. And
Fantastic.
then we'll try to answer them after you're through speaking or after the public hearing.
Fantastic, thank you. And one other thing to mention, and then also looking at the 2 tie-ins to Stillwater over where I reside, I was just trying to understand why we needed 2 there instead of just simply having 1 tie-in if that was necessary, if what I brought up before wouldn't work, where Phase 3 you could tie back into and have your 2 entrances for the subdivision. Those are my 2 main concerns. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, Tim Canali? All right. Greg Gable? Excuse me, Cable. Excuse me, person, there you go.
Greg Cable, 33204 Boardwalk Drive in Stillwater. I had a concern and then a question. My concern is on that second entrance in Farrington in Phase 2. When you look at the map, for anyone who's going to be traveling south on 225, that second entrance becomes almost a shortcut out to 225. And our concern in my household, and I've spoken to some neighbors there in that vicinity, is that when you come out onto Farrington and hang a left, you're coming up to the stop sign and you're heading around Boardwalk, and you're creating a lot of potential traffic in an area that just has a lot of kids, a lot of walkers in that area. So my question is, when the plan was put together, 2 entrances were required, but my question is, are 3 entrances to that development required? Did they tie into it because they could or because it was a requirement? If it was a requirement, I'd like to understand why. And if it wasn't necessary, I would request that it be looked at to eliminate that second entrance on the far side of Farrington, right smack in the middle of the map. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Jason Sykes?
Hey, I'm on here. Hey, thanks for your time. My name is Jason Sykes. I do live in Stillwater on Alder Circle. Previous comments mentioned before were a big concern of mine, specifically that second entrance. If it's hard to tell just looking at this plot map here, but that does go specifically through Stillwater. It's definitely a shortcut. The biggest concern for me is not just the amount of traffic that's added, but it's also exacerbated by the fact that these are smaller lots, smaller homes, high-density population. We have backup issues coming in and out of Stillwater currently during morning hours, rush hour, so that's going to be a problem going forward for us. Second issue that is of extreme concern to me is the Baldwin or the Bay Minette Creek itself. A lot of lowlands, floodplain, marshland in that area. We already have excessive water pollution, discoloration after every little rain coming from further up the creek. This development here looks to really provide additional strain on that ecosystem there in the creek. It is a great concern to us. Would strongly recommend that that we look at that very carefully and make sure everything's in order there. I personally live towards the back of that marshland. I can tell you that it's not in great shape as it is, and so a lot of heavy construction in that area could really put that entire area in some grave danger. The third thing I'd like to bring up just in general is that it seems like we already have a lot of existing issues in the area with regard to power grid, stable. Things have improved since we first moved in, but there's still a long way to go. Still have a lot of unexplained power outages in the area, particularly during summer months when things are just power usage is higher. Concern being that a subdivision of this size on that area could just make that problem even worse. And I've, to this point, really not seen it addressed at all what we're going to do about the power grid in that area. So those are my three main areas. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Dennis DeSimone. Excuse me, press the button and state your name and address, please, sir.
Yes, good evening. Dennis DeSimone, live in Wilkins Creek Estates. Have a couple of concerns there. We're concerned about the small lots across the lake in this subdivision. Quarter-sized lots with smaller homes, where in the lakes and Wilkins Creek we have estate lots, half-acre to acre lots, larger homes, and we're concerned about the drop in the value of our properties with these smaller lots and smaller homes. Also, we'll lose our quiet enjoyment. For several years, there'll be construction across the lake. That's another concern. And then also a question about the common areas. What is planned for the common areas? Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Larry Morses.
I live at 34146 Farrington Drive in Stillwater. I just have one question. Can you mandate that we put the second entrance in retroactively? I mean, the place has been there for 30 years. If the residents don't want it, can you go above them? That's it.
All right, thank you. All right, Keith McCoy.
Hey, my name's Keith McCoy. I live at 32840 Edwards Lane. My main concern is the creek itself, like someone else has said. We own a large amount of property on the opposite side of the creek, about 3/4 of a mile waterfront. And, you know, with all these subdivisions popping up, the creek, it runs red when it rains. With all these subdivisions and all the things being built up, the fishing's been, you know, it's not half of what it used to be 10 years ago when I was growing up. And it seems like the more and more we go through and dam up these watersheds, you know, fill in wetlands, it just gets exponentially worse and worse on our wetlands in Bay Minette Creek. And it's just having a massively negative effect for us every time one of these goes in. And then my other concern is the water system. Whether this is going to be tied into Spanish Fort or Baldwin County, like North Baldwin water, or White House Forks water, whichever one, as Spanish Fort water system keeps up in rates because they can't keep up production, and we're in a toxic relationship with Maws at the moment, you know, buying exponential amounts of water from them to be able to keep water flowing through the taps. You know, if this gets tied in a Spanish Fort water system and the water system hasn't changed anything, we're going to buy more, become more dependent on Maws, and then prices are going to go up for the rest of us residents. So those are my main concerns. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Lynn Borrell.
Thank you, Colonel Retired Lynn Borrell, U.S. Army. Mayor, members of the commission, and fellow citizens of Baldwin County. I moved here 2 years ago after retiring from Fort Benning. I chose this place because of the nature of the citizenry and the area and its politics, which I'm proud of. But now with this pressure, it's been mentioned the electrical grid. My electricity goes out several times a year, and for no conditions caused by the ambient conditions of the area. No storms, it goes out. Water pressure drops because we don't have enough capability within Whitewater at this time. And that highway 225 is extremely dangerous. It has no shoulders on it. Without the expansion, gentlemen, with this expansion, I'm very concerned that not only is our property value going to drop, but the living conditions may be untenable. There is also a tennis court and pool in Stillwater that is paid for by the members of our subdivision, which is probably paying twice what other subdivisions that have golf courses pay for our membership. That's a private matter, but when you put a subdivision like that with those small lots, you will drop our value, and you will drop and put pressure on our pool system, our neighborhood, and I don't think the infrastructure can support it, sir. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, and thank you for your service. All right, we have Dan Vogman.
Keith, nobody can get that right, can they? Vaughn.
I warned y'all I was going to get some of them wrong.
Test, you got it? Hey, I'm Dan Vaughn, live at the lakes on the other side of one of the upper lakes there. And I used to be the president of the homeowners association there, so I know the goings on of the properties and the owners and all the trials and tribulations associated with all, you know, living in these communities like this. I've got a letter here. Our president couldn't be here today. He's out of town, but I told him I would bring this over. It expresses a lot of the same concerns, the infrastructure, the accessibility, and the load on the road. One of the big concerns is the water quality of these lakes, and how much water shed, how much additional water is going to be introduced when they start clearing those properties and those gutters start running all the drain water off into these lakes. There's 2 dams of concern. There's a study, I think, that's going to be presented here in a minute, or some information, recommendation of the dams. So we've got in writing, you know, several bullet points, and so I want to give this to Casey, maybe. Is that? I just wanted to make sure that you had that. I told Neville, our president, I'd come by and deliver that and make sure y'all have that. And I think we all know the water situation as far as runoff and what's going to happen once they start building roads and clearing all that property. So that's one of the big concerns is the infrastructure and water runoff. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Ruth Ann Purr.
Thank you. It's Ruth Ann Pear, and I am a resident of Stillwater, 7071 Carson Lane, and I greatly appreciate allowing me to speak tonight. I have one major concern, and the subject is water. It's already been spoken about in some degree as far as possibly not having enough water. I want people to consider, too, it would be an awful event, but if there was a house fire and we didn't have enough water to help combat the house fire, how bad that would be. And there has been an ongoing issue, as you all know, with water access, no matter what company you're dealing with. And the second thing with water is my own personal experience. I had a neighbor who has since left, my next door neighbor, who decided 4 years ago to wipe out all of his trees and did a lot of excavation in his backyard. It took him 3 months to complete the task. That terrain is the same terrain I have and several of our neighbors. And Carson Lane is directly south of North Woods. The terrain is a hill. In fact, there are several hills. And it gradually goes up and then dips with 225. If you ever see an accident off of 225, usually you just see the rear of the car because at first it went into the ditch and then the hill occurs. When we have rains, and I didn't understand what hard rains were until we moved down south 10 years ago, that rain has to go somewhere. Currently, with his excavation, and people can drive by our neighborhood and my house, you will see water draining into our street literally 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Baldwin County Commissioners came out and they said they couldn't do anything because his damage, he ran into an underground stream. And there are so many underground streams with that hilly area, and when excavation occurs, that's when they run into it. I don't care what kind of study is done topographically, it's the digging that will show up those underground streams. So we have definitely a water issue in 2 points, access and too much. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. All right, is this Allie Bolton?
Good evening. My name is Dr. Allie Bolton. I live at 33556 Boardwalk Drive, and this new subdivision to the north of us is quite concerning for everyone in our subdivision. Not only as everyone has spoken about the water implications and the power implications, I'm a staunch believer in the public education system, and I see so many lots that will be districted for Spanish Fort Elementary School. That is where my kids attend. I choose to be a parent of public schools here because I believe in the public school system, and I believe in you guys making it safe for our kids. This will be a true negative impact in our school system. We're not ready. We've just added on the 6th grade for our elementary schools, and this will be a huge impact for our schools. I don't think we have the teachers. Even with the building, I don't think we have enough to manifest this. I also worry about our property values. We moved from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, to a nice area, and I would hate for people to have to feel like they move because, or feel like they have to move because our property values are decreasing. So not only for infrastructure, not only for education, I do worry about the environmental implications that this neighborhood will provide for our area. So I kind of agree with everyone. So please do the right thing. I cannot think of one neighbor in Stillwater that is excited about this. I cannot think of one neighbor who wants 2 access points. If so, and if it's a fire hazard, please make it just a fire hazard. Please don't make this through traffic. I live on Boardwalk. Our kids are back and forth across the street, and we do not want more traffic for our kids. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Robin Delaney?
Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. My name's Robin Delaney. I represent the property owners, the Southland Gulf, which is the adjacent property to Blakely State Park. And I just want to reiterate a correspondence that I've sent to the city through Casey, to be sure you're aware of it. The first point is that this portion of Highway 225 is designated an Alabama State Scenic Highway, and that reminds all of us what a special area that this particular stretch of the highway is. And so all the issues that are brought up previously should be taken under consideration. One recommendation by the Alabama State Scenic Highway designation is also reflected in the new Baldwin County proposed master plan. It designates this area as a scenic area, and it suggests less density and also a proper setback from the highway. The county's proposed master plan is a 100-foot tree buffer setback. One reason you want to consider this buffer setback is to allow for room for an acceleration or deceleration lane, future public safety issues, and implementation of utilities. Aside from the scenic benefit of a tree buffer zone from the highway, that will also diminish the change in density this development represents to the adjoining developments. I just wanted you to know that we had sent this correspondence in writing, and I will make other comments at a later time. Appreciate y'all's hard work. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, David Cahaley.
Thank you, Jim. Can y'all hear me? Is that good? I don't want to reiterate what's already been said. I think everybody's brought up, I think, what the major concerns are. What I'd like to do is maybe offer some solutions both to Dewberry and also to Dilworth, the developers, as to how this, parcel of land could possibly be utilized. It does have some very significant challenges as a development. I've been all through that property as well as the property behind it and adjacent to it. I own a house in the lakes. One of the initial concerns is actually the lake that it's going to be abutting to. It's really kind of a weird situation where both the lakes owns half of that lake, and this particular community that's being proposed will own half of the lake. It's one of the few situations where you can't really clearly define ownership. And one of the proposals is to make that a common area on the Northwoods master plan. That's going to present a tremendous amount of challenges, both in water quality, securing the fact that this particular neighborhood, and I really think as a solution, if they would reconsider the density of lots. 60-foot lots are commensurate with neighborhoods such as Stonebridge that we have in Spanish Fort, and trying to give you some examples of neighborhoods that they're cottages, they're very tightly packed, and it will create a tremendous amount of necessity to topographically change what's up there right now. That means a lot of land's going to have to get moved around. There's a lot of springs that are going to pop up. It happened when we developed the lakes. It happens when they developed Stillwater. It's going to put a big strain on trying to contain the runoff, and especially if they turn and try to make that a common area. That dam, and one of our neighbors who's a licensed professional engineer with the Corps of Engineers submitted to Casey via an email with pictures and supporting documentation as to the continued pressure that's going to be put on those dams, and that's a real concern. Because when the dams were put in, that was years ago, and they are starting to show some serious signs of wear. So I would respectfully ask Dilworth and also ask Dewberry to help Dilworth come up with a master plan community that would be more commiserate with the adjoining neighborhoods to provide bigger lots, which this neighborhood will support the expense of bigger lots. It solves a lot of the issues that everybody has here tonight. That is to say, infrastructure, wear and tear on the infrastructure. It allows them to put bigger lots, therefore not having to manipulate as much of the ground to put in the roads and to put in the smaller 60-foot lots. It would fit more in line with what Stillwater, the type of homes, the estate properties that are in Stillwater, the estate properties that are in the lakes, and it would allow them to move forward without as much public backlash and blowback that they are receiving, and for good reason, when we're trying to take a neighborhood and with an extremely high density and put it on Highway 225, which I just don't even know how we're going to be able to widen 225 in the future to accommodate the amount of traffic flow that we're already seeing. And if you want to see real life world examples of that, you just need to drive down 181 in Daphne and see what 700, 800, 900 unit subdivisions are causing via traffic flows and studies. We can't keep up with it, and I'm afraid that 225 is the one neighborhood that, or the one road where trying to widen that is just going to be impossible. So just respectfully like them to consider possibly increasing the lot size, thereby decreasing the density, thereby helping take off some of the pressure of the infrastructure that's going to be needed. And thank goodness we do have extraterritorial jurisdictions, ETJ zones, so that the cities that will eventually, or in the future, hopefully take over the neighborhoods can have some sort of say as to how and what and when and how it gets developed up there. Thank you for your time, Jim.
All right, thank you. Thomas, is it Newsom or New? Can't read your last.
That's all right. My handwriting's terrible. It's Thomas Nevin, Nevin. I'm a resident of Stillwater at 7113 Carson Lane. I just want to reiterate most of the comments that were already said by our neighbors, but I would like to say a few words. Specifically towards the water runoff, because Carson Lane is, as Ms. Ruth said, on a hill. We are constantly dealing with constant runoff, and I think it's going to be exacerbated when the woods are cleared. And so long as there's proper drainage that would help facilitate the movement of this water away from our neighborhood. We had an elderly neighbor not too long ago break his leg from the leaching that occurred from all this water runoff that's coming down from 225 and from the north. Secondly, I'm not necessarily against the development of the property that's to the north of Stillwater, but again, why are they cramming such a high-density neighborhood into two neighborhoods that are lower density? I think the planning should be commensurate with the neighborhoods that it surrounds, or it'll be in between. And then finally, the proposed cut-through that they're proposing for Farrington runs directly into my backyard. I was wondering about setbacks, the barriers that we're gonna have between the two neighborhoods. And again, I'm not against the development per se, but it seems like Stillwater's being penalized with a second entrance to our neighborhood to get access to this Northwoods neighborhood. We are, at all times of the day, you can see walkers, joggers, people out in strollers walking around the neighborhood. There's very little vehicle traffic, and I think with the proposed entrance or secondary entrance into this neighborhood through Farrington is just going to increase increase traffic flow through Stillwater, and I don't think that should be on us. I think the builder should propose a secondary entrance somewhere on their property, not ours. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Patrick Hilgendorf?
You got it right, sir. Must have had you hooked on phonics. I'm proud of you. My name's Patrick Hilgendorf. I live at 34255 Farrington Lane. I'm curious about the requirement or the recommendation for the second entrance out there. I don't know if you've got any kind of law or code or anything like that I could reference on there. The reason I ask that is because the lakes, they don't have a secondary entrance. Stillwater, even though we've got the boulevards, we technically have one entrance exit. Timber Creek is another example out there. Wilson Drive runs right into the back of Timber Creek and to Elderberry and Lake Boulevard. And they've got probably as many or more homes as this subdivision does, and they don't have a secondary entrance going out of there if it's truly a public safety concern. I've noticed that they have other subdivisions or other neighborhoods where they've got a barrier gate or something like that to block some of the concerns of the flow of traffic out there. So I didn't know if that would be an option to consider as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, I believe that's it for the public hearing. Anybody else here wish to speak? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing and open this up for discussion with the commission. David is our legal counsel here for the Planning Commission. We may ask him and call on him for numerous comments or answers to a lot of these questions. We may call on the representative from the developer. All right, we'll open it up for discussion with the commission at this time. We do have a letter here from somebody that couldn't be here this evening. Casey, you've got that in the records. We'll enter that into the minutes. David, it's quite lengthy, so I don't think we'll go into reading that this evening. Let's see, I have about 11 different comments that people were interested in. I guess let's first address the second entrance and the tie-in and why that's necessary. David, you want to?
From a code standpoint, every subdivision that has, and Casey and Matthew help me on this, more than 30 homes is required to have a second access in and out of the subdivision. Part of this came on with changes in the building codes over the years and enforcement. Most jurisdictions are now requiring that. 20, 30 years ago, they didn't look at it quite as much as they do now. Today, Stillwater and the lakes both would have trouble getting approval in jurisdictions because they both only have one way in and one way out. Timber Creek does have a boulevard that allows access on, I think it's 31 and 181, but there are some areas, I think you referred to Wilson Heights, where Pine Run is just such a long run, single access, that there was a request and provision made for an access there, but there's a much more houses and density in Timber Creek than there are that's being proposed here, but that's the idea about having the access. Likewise, one of the previous comments that was mentioned was, and again, I'm not advocating one way or the other, I'm just trying to answer questions as it happened. That's up to the property owners and the engineer and the owner to talk about, but I do think that there was some concern about the number of connections between the subdivisions. Lots of times in planning and development, the county zoning ordinance, for example, and others do allow and encourage connectivity to allow for evacuation routes and those kind of things as necessary. And I think there are a number of stub outs that were built, I know in Stillwater, but maybe in the lakes as well. And I think the developers have intentionally reduced the number of connections and are not using all the stub outs based on comments that were made at previous meetings by property owners in Stillwater. So there are going to be areas that were previously platted and approved for connectivity to this parcel and neighboring parcels that are not going to be utilized under this plan, and that's in a direct response, I think, to concerns that were raised.
All right. We have, let's see, infrastructure, power, water. Casey, I know you got the letters from all the utilities. Is this EMC or Riviera?
I believe they've got Riviera showing either on this one or the Phase 1 plat.
Bowen EMC and White House Forks Water, I believe.
Okay, so it's not Spanish Fort Water then?
No.
Okay. All right. Lot size, we may get the developer to look at this. Casey, what is our average lot size there?
believe it was around 12,000 square feet.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, could somebody let us know what the lot widths are in Stillwater and the lakes on average?
100 to 120, they're roughly 1 acre lots, give or take, depending on how the lot flat.
In certain areas, but not in all areas, and there's some sections that have smaller lots, right?
Carson is a bit smaller, more of a garden home type area there, but the rest of the neighborhood is approximately that size.
If the count is correct here, there'll be 65 60-foot lots and 96 80-foot lots, so far as lot widths are concerned. The minimum lot size requirement, I think, for the county is 60 foot, is that right? And in the RS4 zoning classification, if I'm looking at this correctly, I think it allows for a minimum lot size of 60 square foot, but the zoning classification allows for 4 dwelling units per acre. And what is the density here? And the reason I ask that question is I'm looking at the site summary, and it's showing 0.67 units per acre, but I don't know how you get there. To me, it looks like more about 1.75 per acre. If we got 161 lots on 171 acres, 170, let me start that again. We got 161 lots on 107 acres. The density's got to be more than 0.62 an acre. So what is the density? When I do the calculation, I come up with that 1.75 an acre. Is that correct?
It's probably incorrectly calculated, yes, sir,
Okay, so it's about 1.75 an acre, which is much less than half of the RS4 zoning that's on that property. And again, less than 2 units an acre, so for what that's worth.
And we can't address zoning because it's just in our ETJ, so whatever it's zoned for is what it's zoned for.
Right, we would never approve a lot that was smaller or a density that was less than the underlying zoning classification, but in this case, it's a less dense, larger lots than are required in the RSF4.
Mr. Connor, I'm looking at 43.21 acres. Are you combining something I'm missing here? Because
That's in phase 1. I'm looking at the overall master plan, and the engineer had to correct me on this, or Casey. It says size of existing parcel is 107.43 acres, and the number of lots proposed is 161. So there's no way that can be 0.67 an acre density. So when I did my math, I came up with about 1.75 an acre. So that needs to be corrected.
All right, Casey, does they do meet our requirements for common areas? And at this time, do we have anything on the common areas as far as what they're going to be?
I think the common areas were just described on here as recreation. But we did ask them to go back and clarify that on the common areas, and they did make that change.
All right, but he does meet the requirement for the site, for the amount of common area for the,
Yes.
for the PUD. Okay. All right, what's the setback from 225? How far back are you, the back of these lots, off of 225? Can you answer that?
Not off the top of my head, it's at least 50 feet, I believe, off the right of way.
I can't hardly tell from the drawings that we have. Casey, can you see that?
It's about 100 feet from the center of 225.
700?
100,
Oh, 100.
about 100.
From the center line, yes, sir.
And does that meet the setback requirements of the setback legislation as well?
That's what Matthew and I were actually just talking about. I don't know, we adopted that either by ordinance or resolution, so would that really apply on our behalf, or would it be on the county's behalf?
It would be on the county, but it has application in the county. I just asked the question, does that meet that requirement?
The first few lots, I guess, at the entrance technically wouldn't, but that'd be on the county to enforce that. Yeah, it would be closed depending on the setbacks and things like that. It'd be to the closest building setback line from the center line of 225. So it'd be pretty close.
Are you aware of the, I believe it was Mr. Delaney brought up some maybe potential changes to Baldwin County's requirements, maybe a pending change to their master plan about setback requirements? Is that something that we have any knowledge of that would be enacted soon, or, okay?
Yeah, and I'll have to apologize to Mr. Delaney. He did send me that email, actually before the last public hearing was scheduled, and it was right before I left for Thanksgiving vacation, so it unfortunately didn't get printed out with the other emails that y'all have today, but I'll make sure and get that sent to you. He did mention the proposed master plan for Baldwin County. Does recommend along Highway 225 a 100-foot tree buffer for rural conservation development less than 2.4 acres, and just sent some excerpts from the master plan. But I don't know if anything's been officially approved, formally approved, and once again, a master plan is a guidebook. It's not a set of regulations either, so I'd take that, how you will.
Are the lots along Highway 225 any closer to 225 than the lots in Stillwater or the lakes, or do they pretty much line up?
They're not going to be any closer. They may be a little further away, actually. Just looking at it quick, I haven't measured that, but there does seem to be maybe a little bit of a buffer at the front of this one. They do have some common area at the front of this neighborhood that's not present in Stillwater and the lakes, so it is going to be set back further from 225 than the other two.
All right, another comment was brought up about ownership of the lake. It does seem a little odd that two different subdivisions, two different POAs will be owned in the same lake. Is the lake on your part, will it be open to anybody in the subdivision or just lot owners that back up to the lake?
There is continuity from their walking trails from the dam coming across into ours. It goes around our pond that will be in that northwest corner. A full continuous walking trail around and out. There will be no, to the back of those lots to that lake, there's no access to the public. They back up just the same way that they do to the north in the lakes.
All right, David, do you see any legal issue with two different subdivisions owning the same lake?
The one question that I have, based on the comments that we're going to talk about here in a minute, is who actually owns the land where the dam in question is located?
It's split by the both of us. That's the property line that Chase is right here down the middle. Dilworth owns the south side. Their homeowners association owns the north side.
I mean, I don't see anything necessarily problematic about that per se. Both entities and property owners were aware that that was approved and constructed. I mean, that's the way this property was developed. You'd have, it is kind of funny to have different ownership on either side of the lake, but you have people develop both times. The question I have, and I can guarantee you it's not a city responsibility or a county responsibility, I don't believe, is who's going to be responsible for maintaining that dam based on the issues that have been arisen. So that's something that's going to have to be addressed at some point in time in the future. If there are real concerns about the dam, those concerns are there before this development's even started. So that needs to be addressed.
Sure.
We'll talk about that further in the next meeting, the next agenda item.
All right, let's see. The issue of springs, Matthew, you may want to address that, but I would assume if when they're cutting in roads, if they hit springs as they're clearing and putting in roads, and they would have to put in French drains and divert that water and keep it off of the roads and send it into the stormwater drainage system into the detention ponds. Is that correct? Or is there another way they would be addressing springs?
It would definitely be a good practice to have under drain in the roadways to capture that water so that you don't, so that you have good integrity of your roadway. I can talk too, real quick about some of the questions regarding stormwater runoff and what the city's responsibility is in regard to that. We have regulations that govern the amount of post-developed runoff that's allowed. The requirement is that post-developed runoff, the rate of the runoff, not exceed pre-developed runoff. So that is the amount of water that is leaving the site per a period of time. So the rate that that water leaves. The engineer for this site modeled this subdivision along with the existing subdivision, considered the entire system, and showed that the post-developed runoff does not exceed the pre-developed runoff. He's utilizing a couple of constructed ponds as well as the existing lakes that are there. So he is utilizing the existing lakes as a detention feature. He modeled the outlet control structures through those dams, and and showed that after this development comes in, there is no increase in the runoff compared to what it was before any of these subdivisions came in.
All right, any other questions on the, comments on the runoff, or?
Well, will that be built to county standards or city standards? I'm a little bit confused about whose standards will be in effect there. The most stringent of the two?
They're pretty comparable, I believe. The city has pretty stringent stormwater standards.
That
require
comes from years
detention.
of fixing things, let me
Right,
tell
so
you.
I can provide a little bit more detail.
Yeah, I believe it should be built to city standards.
And it is.
We'd
So
also
the-
look at the more stringent. I think the statute says that the road has to be built to county standards or they will not accept it for maintenance. Now, part of that road includes drainage structures, obviously, but the overall, I think, certainly the more stringent standards should apply, but I think ours are the more stringent, but you'd have to tell me.
So our requirements, like I mentioned, are to, for the post-development flow, not to exceed the pre-developed flow. And that's for the 2-year storm, 5, 10, 25, 50, and 100-year storm are all considered in that calculation. So I think we have a pretty good stormwater ordinance. Personally, stormwater is something that I'm passionate about. And so I share concerns that the property owners have. I think the city's done a good job in implementing this ordinance and doing everything that can be done to protect downstream property owners.
All right, how often does ADEM come out and inspect these subdivisions? I'm really concerned about the runoff in Bay Minette Creek or somewhere such as that. Do they come out quite frequently, like after heavy rains, or once a month, 2 times a month, or?
Is the question during construction or?
Yeah, during construction of the subdivision, because that's a lot of times when most of the runoff would occur.
There may be some city jurisdiction, I'm not sure in this particular subdivision, but the city would perform stormwater inspections on houses that are under construction. Casey can maybe talk to it.
How about as the roadways are being, as the subdivision be put in the roadways?
Yeah, we would be more involved in the road construction, not the house construction. The houses would be under the county, but throughout the process, it would be kind of a threefold jurisdictional cooperative kind of between us, the county, and ADEM for what you're talking about. ADEM's pretty much going to come do inspections as needed, or if they get complaints and calls, as long as their site representative is doing their inspections like they're supposed to and reporting to them regularly. So.
All right, thank you. All right, public school system, we had a question on that. Is this in Spanish Fort's school district, or will this be Bay Minette, or?
I would think it'd probably in, the lakes and all them, it'd be Spanish Fort Elementary. Of course, they are building a new school there with an expansion, so.
All right, you or city council member, do y'all wish to comment on that any as far as the public schools go, or?
Well, they said
Let the
it's-
one that works for the school board talk about it.
Yeah, I have a little expertise there, I guess, but, yeah, it's, I live the other end of the city, and near Stillwater and excuse me, near Stillwater, Stonebridge. And so we've seen same thing, you know, just, you know, large numbers of new homes coming in and affecting us. And you know, full disclosure, I work for the school system, my day job, and it's just a fast-growing county. You know, we're real proud of the county. We're pay as we go. We're not borrowing a lot of money to build a lot of buildings for you, so we're proud of that. But there's just it's gonna be, you know, it's gonna grow. Our secret's out, and people want to come, and so we're constantly growing. You know, I get you. I understand, and I'm not sure that I can't speak for how soon the school system would address that, but as they see new development, then they're gonna build new buildings and hire more teachers if we can find them. So, don't have a great answer. I don't have what you want to hear, but it's a fact everywhere.
Yeah, the schools will address the growth, just like they do every day. The infrastructure concerns I hear out there is concerning to me, because while I had some social media conversation this weekend, which I swore I'd never do, with some people that says water's great supply up that way. I've always heard there's always been issues up that way. I do know this, that yes, there are maybe some future plans to tie in some water sources for that area from other areas, North Baldwin Utilities or wherever they're talking about doing. The power grid, I feel very certain they're gonna make sure they're selling you power. They're not gonna let you run out. That's what they make their profits on. So, you know, the infrastructure needs, yeah, I see that being fulfilled, and it may take a little growing pains to make it happen. I guess my concerns are, 225 is a concern to me, but I also have had conversations with ValDOT about future plans to expand it. Don't look for it anytime soon, because ValDOT doesn't have any money. But there are plans down the road for that. I feel the pain of perhaps the neighborhood having smaller lots that's adjacent to neighborhoods that maybe have bigger lots, but that's just supply and demand and what the market bears. You know, there'll be people that'll buy some, people won't buy it because it's smaller. But, you know, that's the landowner's right to choose what size as long as it meets our specs, so.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Have we seen, I don't think we've seen any subdivision in the last 3 or 4 years or longer that has had anything much larger than an 80 to 90-foot lot, have we?
They don't make them that
I think
big
that's just the
anymore.
market. Most
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
now, although I disagree with them, don't want a acre-sized lot or even a half acre large. They want smaller. That just seems to be what the market's asking for. As far as the interconnectivity, I would say that could be a plus for Stillwater. I believe you've only got one entrance, Stillwater, in the lakes. Is that correct, in and out? Or y'all have more, one entrance? Well, if there was a, God forbid, an accident up on 225, an explosion or anything, then that would give y'all also another way out of the subdivision, either way, just saying. But it is a international code with what wasn't in effect when your subdivisions were built, that is now in effect, that anything over, 40, 45 lots has to interconnect or have a second entrance. So Anyhow, any other comments with the commission?
I'll say that was a hypothetical in my neighborhood until it wasn't. I actually, there was a wreck in front of my neighborhood, and I couldn't get in or out. I had to go to the second, route that was added after our neighborhood was constructed, and it was just the same deal. When my neighborhood was originally constructed, the ISO, or the International Fire Code, I guess, didn't call for that, and so as a city, we hadn't adopted that requirement. But since then, we've added it. We made a connection to a road adjacent to our neighborhood, and it served me at least once, is all I can say.
All right, any other discussion with the commission?
Mr. Chairman, real quick, there was a question about fire flow and concerns about the water. I just wanted to mention real quick that the city requires that final plat for fire flow calculations and test reports to be submitted to show that the hydrants that have been installed can actually provide the fire flow that's required.
All right. All right, any other discussion with the commission?
I am sensitive, and I'll just say too, I really appreciate all you guys coming out and telling us what you think, because I need to hear it. But I am sensitive to this idea that the smaller lots will affect the property values of the existing homes. I'm sensitive to it, but I don't know what we can really do about that. So what I've heard is that the lots meet the minimum requirements by the county, and this is not a situation where when the current homeowners in Stillwater and the Lakes, when they purchased, there was no existing plan for larger lots that they assumed were going to be there that have been downsized. Am I saying that correctly?
I'm not aware of any PUD plan that locked in the size of the lots or the layouts are there. I couldn't tell you exactly if there were any other master plans there. But so that's the only answer I know. There's not a PUD over this site that locks in the layout of these lots.
All right, any other discussion? Excuse me, our public hearing's closed. We had a public hearing, and that's over with. All right, any other discussion? All right, do I have a motion?
And this is just for the master plan.
Agenda item 221102.
I'll make the motion. We can vote it down or vote it up, but I'll make the motion that 221102 be approved as recommended by staff.
All right, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a Bernard. Do I have any discussion on the motion?
I'll say this. This is certainly controversial, and I feel your pain all the way around, but landowners do have rights to build what they want to build as long as they meet our guidelines, our safety issues, and everything that goes with it. So it may not be the perfect scenario but you didn't build in that neighborhood either. You went to a bigger neighborhood, and those are good things. I live in a neighborhood now that I wish I was in a smaller lot, because I really don't like it, cutting all that grass and doing all that yard work, but I do it every day.
All right, any other discussion on the motion? All right, roll call, Carol.
Davis,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Tucker,
Yes.
McMillan.
Yes.
All right, motion's approved. All right, we have agenda item 221103. This is an application for preliminary plat. We'll have a public hearing at our meeting here tonight on this agenda item. It's Northwood Subdivision Phase 1, U.S. Highway 225, north of Stillwater Subdivision. Preliminary Engineers, Inc., on behalf of Dilworth Development, Inc. Casey, staff report, please, sir.
Mr. Chairman, this particular agenda item has been requested to be postponed by the applicant.
All right, thank you, Casey. We're going to go, since we have a public hearing, we're going to go ahead and open this public hearing tonight.
I would suggest that you go ahead and present the case, Casey,
Okay.
to set it up for the public hearing, but because there are people that are here, and then give that opportunity, and then, Mr. Chairman, I suggest that you recess the public hearing and reconvene at the next meeting to allow for any further comments based on these items.
All right, Casey.
Mr. Chairman, this applicant is requesting approval for Phase 1 of Northwood subdivision, located to the east of US Highway 225 and north of Stillwater subdivision, outside the corporate limits of the city of Spanish Fort. The master plan as submitted proposes, that should say the preliminary plat as submitted proposes to subdivide 43.21 acres located to the north of Stillwater subdivision and to the south of the Lake subdivision into 57 lots, averaging approximately 12,000 square feet per lot. The applicant is proposing to construct 3,562 linear feet of roadway in this phase with a right-of-way of 60 feet. The proposed phase would connect to Stillwater subdivision via Aberdeen Way. The existing conditions within the vicinity of the subject property are typical low to medium density single-family residential uses, similar to the proposed development. Traffic study has been provided with the initial application for master plan approval and has been reviewed by city staff. The traffic improvements as recommended in the study include a north and southbound turn lane on State Route 225 at the subdivision entrance, and also an additional southbound right turn lane on State Route 225 at US 31 with signal phasing and timing at full build-out. A northbound right turn lane on State Route 225 at the subdivision entrance is recommended by the study after completion of 42 of the 57 single-family homes in Phase 1. The applicant has submitted a letter of request in order to request a waiver from the Spanish Fort subdivision regulations requiring a maximum roadway grade of 7%, and request that they be allowed to follow the Baldwin County subdivision regulations on this matter, which would allow a maximum grade of 15%. Applicant has provided verification of service availability from all utility providers. That's everything for that one.
All right, thank you, Casey. We're not going to open this up for discussion with the commission since it has been postponed at the applicant's request, but since we had a public hearing on this agenda item this evening slated, we'll go ahead and open that public hearing. Anybody? Let's see, I have Michael Brazo.
Michael Brongo, 33178 Boardwalk Drive, Stillwater. I guess I'll circle back to what I first said, but I'll break it down here to Phase 1 because that's what we're on. This connectivity right here, is it going to be constantly open? Is it going to be emergency use only where it has some sort of barricade? I didn't really get the answer previous as far as egress, second egress up top, but I guess that doesn't matter. But I guess specifically regarding this connectivity here through Stillwater Farrington, which is obviously my concern where I live, is that going to be open access along with the second one approved on the master plan, or will they be blockaded for emergency use only? Thanks.
All right, thank you. All right, anybody else here wish to speak? All right, public hearing's closed. We'll open it up for discussion and try to answer your question this time. I'm sorry if we didn't get to one of them on the last, but this will be open 24/7. It won't be closed. It won't be strictly for emergencies. It will be an open access for traffic to ingress and egress. All right. It's open for discussion with commission. Excuse me, wait, this has been postponed, so I'm going to adjourn this.
We'll recess the public hearing.
Recess the public hearing, and we'll reconvene it at our next regular meeting.
And that next regular meeting, Mr. Chairman, is, what's the date of that meeting? So that you can announce it.
January 9th.
January 9th at 6:30 PM. Reconvene this public hearing when this item comes up. And the reason that we're postponing is because the owner has in writing requested that action on the item be postponed to the next meeting. And this will allow you to reopen the public hearing in the event that anyone else has any additional information they would like to provide.
All right, we have agenda item 221105, application for zoning change. We'll have a public hearing on this agenda item tonight. It's from a B3 to a B4. 20000 Bass Pro Drive. The applicant is Cypress Spanish Fort III LLC. It has been postponed tonight. We have a public hearing. Did anybody come here to speak on this agenda item this evening?
Mr. Chairman, that was a typo on the agenda. That shouldn't have said public hearing. We didn't send out notices for that one.
Okay, all right. All right. All right, we'll move along then. Agenda item 221201, application for site plan, Baldwin Bone and Joint, Doctor's Office, 10701 Eastern Shore Boulevard, Lot 1, Baldwin Bone and Joint subdivision. That has also been postponed tonight. All right, we have agenda item 221202, application for zoning change. We'll have a public hearing this evening. Description is from an R1 to a B3. The location is 32055 Broken Branch Circle. The applicant is Terry and Samantha Duncan. Casey, staff report, please, sir.
Mr. Chairman, this applicant is proposing to rezone property located at 32128, that was 32055 Broken Branch Circle, in the Woodside Business Park located along US Highway 31 to the southeast of Cambron subdivision. The requested zoning change is from R1 to B3. The current site was recently annexed into the city limits over the summer as part of a large legislative annexation, and by default has been zoned R1, low-density single-family residential. Property is currently being utilized as an electrical contractor's shops/office. Due to the property's recent annexation, the future land use map of the comprehensive plan cannot be referenced, as the proposed zoning for this area was not identified at the time. However, based on the original plan of development for the overall center as a business park, as well as the previous zoning in Baldwin County's jurisdiction as commercial, staff feels confident in recommending the proposed zoning change for this parcel. Therefore, staff recommends the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council regarding agenda item 221202, application for zoning change from R1 to B3 for 32055 Broken Branch Circle.
All right, thank you, Casey. All right, we'll open it up for discussion.
I'd just say that this goes along with what we've been talking about. It's the right use for this area.
All right, any other discussion? All right, we'll have our public hearing. Tim Canoli?
My name is Tim Knoll. I live at 32044 Wildflower Trail. Thank you, Commissioners, Mayor, for hearing my concerns. We're not naive. This is a business park. We obviously thought, we knew there were businesses coming in. However, being a B3, the definition is this district is intended to provide opportunity for activities causing noise and heavy traffic. So noise, I couldn't find a definition in your regulations anywhere that define what noise is. We have several homes that are right behind this business park, right behind this business. And so we were just curious, what is noise defined? I know some things has a decibel rate. Also, is this considered noise during regular business hours? The business has been operating for quite a few months, maybe even a year. And there has been noise on weekends and after hours, excuse me, sometimes even in the middle of the night. I assume that was during the building process. However, this is right behind homes, and if it's being operated in the middle of the night, that's something that we're concerned about. The second thing that we're concerned about is under your screening, lighting, and space, outdoor lighting of all types shall be directed as to reflect away from all adjacent properties. And some of the lighting here, this may just be a complaint, but some of the lighting here, it shines through the woods, even though they did leave the trees and they do have a 9-foot fence, which we do appreciate very much. Some of the lighting, because of the building height, does shine in some of the homes directly behind the building. And the last thing has to do with surface drainage. My home is the one on the corner there, and I'm starting to get flooding in the corner of my lot. And this is just the very first business that's being built there. The sediment basin that was built, I can't, comment. I haven't gone out and measured it, but if it's already causing flooding, when they continue to build these businesses, will that continue with more flooding and more flooding? And the final thing is you just approved the other lot, the other red one, I think number 3, as a B2, which is intended for limited retail goods and personal service, where this one is something being approved for noise and heavy traffic, which is the one that abuts where the homes are. And we were just curious if that was something that's being considered, that you have on one side that's not along the street, you're having B2, and the ones that are up against the homes is a B3. So those are all my comments. I have one more thing if y'all are interested. I work for ADEM. I'm the construction stormwater manager, and you had a question about that, how often our inspectors go out. We're driven by complaints, and we're driven by, we get a list of whenever permits come in, and then from time to time, we look through the list, and then as we prioritize them, we go out and inspect the sites.
All right, thank you.
That's it. Thank you.
All right, anybody else? All right, let's see, these were built prior to coming into the city, is that correct? So
Yeah.
do we,
If you want me to
we
take-
didn't have any control over the lighting, or can we have an after the fact? Or if they've got lights shining into?
Yeah, I can take a couple of these if you want me to, Mr. Chairman. The first one I heard was noise. It basically is just a general statement that for a general business district that you can expect to have more noise, traffic, those kind of things. I think this property was prior to coming to the city in an unzoned area of the county, is that correct? Okay.